understanding that with the help of our higher power, we can actually start, learning how to fit in and how to be of usefulness to other people. I mean, I think the people that mentored us, people that have walked us through this process, they've all committed themselves to be of usefulness to others. And what it says in the big book, right, is that our job now is to be of maximum usefulness to God and our fellows. I don't think that means an hour a week in a meeting.
Welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast with your hosts Michael L. and Lee M. This is a show where we strive to provide inspiration through interviews with members of the recovery community. We are not aligned with any 12-step program, but you may hear them mentioned throughout the course of an interview. Today on the show, Kevin P. from Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Once again, he returns to the show. He's sharing on the concept of the root of our troubles, selfishness, self-centeredness. It's great to have Kevin back. I hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, Lee. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. It is February 12th. How are you doing?
Never better. February 12th. That means that none other than Kevin P. is back. Kevin, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on the show. Today, you're going to cover the daily reflection for February 12th, which is the root of our troubles. Would you get us started by reading the daily reflection?
Oh, I'd absolutely be honored to. You bet. The root of our troubles. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 62. How amazing the revelation that the world and everyone in it can get along just fine with or without me. What a relief to know that people, places, and things will be perfectly okay without my control and direction. And how wordlessly wonderful to come to believe that a power greater than me exists separate and apart from myself. I believe that the feeling of separation I experience between me and God will one day vanish. In the meantime, faith must serve as the pathway to the center of my life.
Wow. Sounds like a tall order.
Yeah, it was like the first part, I was like, how amazing the revelation that the world and everyone in it can get along just fine with or without me. I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
It's a shock.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that now?
Well, I think that the just the whole title, the selfishness and self-centeredness, we think is the root of our troubles. My one of my firm beliefs in my recovery and my sobriety has always been that quitting drinking and quitting using drugs is about, I have my fingers like an inch apart right now. That's how it's big a deal that is. And then I put my hands about a yard or 6 feet apart. And that's how big a deal me learning how to act differently, treat people differently, and behave differently. That's the critical piece. And that's what I think they're talking about is the selfishness and self-centeredness is that, congratulations, Kevin, you quit drinking on May 5th, 1991. Hallelujah, thank God. And now the real work starts. Now we're really going to get into it and we're going to teach you how to behave like a grown-up. And we're going to also show you a path of actually being able to coexist with other people so that they'll actually like you and want you around. Yeah.
It's almost like the reflection is referring to right sizing ourselves.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, it really is, right? Is the concept here is, understanding that with the help of our higher power, we can actually start, learning how to fit in and how to be of usefulness to other people. I mean, I think, when I look at the bedevilments, right, on page 52, and, that we talk about that checklist of unmanageability, right? And the one that always really stuck out with me is that, am I being of real use to other people? Or is this just all about what Kevin can get his hands on and what Kevin can get his needs fulfilled at whatever level that I want that to happen. And I think, what happened for me, one of the big moments that happened for me in 2007 when I was 16 years sober and I was 43 years old, and I had a great job. I was making a ton of money and everything was wonderful on the outside, but on the inside I was just empty and a shell. I just was so unhappy and miserable. And I sat and talked to my buddy Brad. Brad's been sober about the same amount of time, and he had gone back to nursing school. And he just, I could see it. You know when someone's on fire, right? I could see it in his soul that he was just, I have found it, you know. And so I sat and talked to him. I'm like, dude, I don't like, I'm not happy. I got divorced 2 years ago, and I'm miserable, and I don't know what to do here. And he's like, Kevin, the people that mentored us, and because we were mentored by the same people in AA, and the people that have walked us through this process, they've all committed themselves to be of usefulness to others. And what it says in the big book, right, is that our job now is to be of maximum usefulness to God and our fellows. He goes, I don't think that means an hour a week in a meeting, or the occasional phone call. I think that means 24/7 across the board. It means that you got to get into a profession where you're engaged in the active charity of helping others. And we talked about that, and I was like, is that how you became a nurse? And he's like, yeah, that's what really turned me on. He's like, what about you? What do you really like? I'm like, I just love people. And he's like, I think you should be a therapist. And I agreed, and so I started walking down that path. And I'll tell you something. One of my heroes in our program is a guy named Tom I in Southern Pines, North Carolina, and um, he's he's in his 80s right now, and he's suffering from Alzheimer's. But his story starts with waking up in jail again, except this time he killed two people in a blackout driving on the sidewalk. And the story goes to him becoming a warden of a prison in North Carolina. And his position was that only happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. He was like, God had work for me to do, and all I had to do was show up, and he opened the doors and made it all happen. And I, what my experience was is that when I made up my mind that that's what I was going to do and that's where I was going to go, God literally kicked doors open for me that never should have been open for me. And I went to school, got a great job right off the bat, opened up private practice, and now I have a great practice, and I'm helping people, I'm writing books, but I'm doing stuff, and it's all based on the simple concept of being of maximum service to God and my fellows.
Such a cool message that you're talking about right now, and I kind of have had this sense for quite a while now that that the universe is this place that wants growth and forward movement and rebirth and new chances, and that if we commit ourselves to that all the doors open, that
Mm-hmm.
everything falls into place. That if
Mm-hmm.
if we are actually walking around trying to be of service to others, then all of that falls into place. That's so cool. The universe conspires to get us to where we need to be if the purpose is to help others. And that's what you're saying. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that I think is, that's why, I mean, right? That's why the 12th step is, having had a spiritual awakening, so that had to happen, right? I had to sort of wake up and be like, oh, okay, tried to practice these principles in all of us and carry the message. We had to carry the message. To me, that means helping others and practice these principles in all our affairs. That means it's not good enough to just not drink. I have to take it to that next step, and I have to start carrying this through my entire life of being, you know, a good person and decent and kind and helping others. And don't get me wrong, I'm not Mother Teresa, I mean, let's be clear, but I think at the end of the day, it's an opportunity. Every day is an opportunity to show up for others and be there for others, and you know, and I don't know. I just don't. It's the only way I feel fulfilled in life is what it comes down to.
Mm. And is that the judge? I mean, how do you determine if you're being of maximum service in the right areas?
I think for me, just for me, what I get is this sense of I get it's like a sense of I'm ill at ease or I'm uncomfortable. We start right. So some of the best advice I got from a sponsor about the 10th step is he's like, look, it's obvious when you cheated someone or you lied to someone or you did something behind somebody's back or something along those lines. He's like, that big stuff you're going to catch right off the bat. But what I want you to take a look at on a daily basis is when you start to get that feeling, that inside your gut feeling that this is wrong. This is not right. He goes, and I don't even mean, after the fact. He goes, I mean when you're in the situation and you're like, oh no, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And I believe that is a God consciousness and that is an intuition that as we continue to use prayer and meditation, continue to use the 10th step, continue to use helping others, that we get into this space where we start to develop that sense of knowing intuitively what's right and what's wrong, and knowing what we should and shouldn't be doing. And so the idea is ultimately not to have to wait till afterwards to be like, oh crap, I screwed up. It's to be in the moment and yeah, you know what? This is not the right thing for me. Thanks anyway. I'm just going to take a step back, you know?
Yeah. So it's the second month, and I'm trying to be conscious of what the second step is all about.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking about the possibility that there might be someone listening that is struggling, maybe hasn't been through the steps yet. Can you help the newcomer understand what step 2 is about?
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so the second step came to believe in a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. You know, the way it was outlined to me, and I still do this with the guys that I work with, and I still believe in this, is that when I look at the first step, am I powerless over alcohol, or drugs? What that means is that I have to look at the physical allergy, the mental obsession, and the spiritual malady. All the pieces of once I start, can I stop or control it? No, I don't. I don't have that capacity. Can I keep myself from the first drink? No, I have this thing where I'm just constantly talking myself back into it. Do I have a connection with a spirit that's going to help me through this process? No, I don't. So that's the first step. That launches me beautifully into the second step to answer your question, is that I need help. The second step to me is I need help. And that help needs to come in the form of some sort of connection with a spirit or something that's going to keep me out of that crazy thinking, because that crazy thinking is what gets me to the drink. And when I drink, that's when the party's on. It's funny. Sorry, this is one of my favorite ones, man. I have a friend in LA, Bill, and he always says, everybody talks about the third step. Ooh, the third step, third step, the third step. He's like, the third step's a formality. So real work is the second step. He's like, in the second step, we have to choose, is God everything or is God nothing? That's it. It's one or the other. There's no in betweens. There's no, does God need my help here? Nope, he doesn't need your help at all. You know, and so you got to love addicts and alcoholics. We have to have a special step that now that we've decided God is everything, then now I'm going to decide to give my life over to the care of God. Don't you kind of feel like God's standing there like, oh, goody,
Yeah.
oh, thank goodness Kevin came to his senses and is allowing me to be in charge.
Well, as though they're separate things. God is everything, but I might not actually decide to turn my will, my life over to him. It's
Yeah.
funny.
So for the new guy look, I didn't walk in with a religious background. I grew up with an anti-religious background. So walking in and thinking, what the hell is this God stuff? It's like, look, let me make it clear. Can you stop drinking on your own or stop using drugs on your own? No. Okay, cool. Hang out with us. We're going to show you how we did it. And the way we did it is we access this process we call the 12 steps. And in the 12 steps, you're going to develop a relationship with a spirit. And that spirit, or whatever you want to call it, is going to keep you keep you from that first drink. And that's that. And that's, I try to break it down as easily as that, as straightforward as that.
Love it.
Yeah.
I like how it is simple. It can be simple when you break it down. It's we complicate things though, for sure, as addicts and alcoholics. Kevin, are the 12 steps and the program of recovery that we all found in Alcoholics Anonymous, do you think that's the only way that works?
That's a great question, and I get that all the time, especially in my professional life as being a marriage and family therapist, because I primarily work with families that are struggling with addiction and codependency, and a lot of people come in with a huge bias against the 12-step world, and I tell them, here's the deal. On both sides of the coin, by the way, the addict alcoholic and then the codependent and the family members. And I tell them, I said, here's the thing. My position is two things have to happen. You have to get abstinent from whatever it is, whether it's the drinking, the drugs, the eating, the gaming, the gambling, the porn, whatever, or the controlling, manipulative, passive aggressive behavior patterns as well that the codependents have, and not just the behavior patterns for the codependents. It's the nonstop worrying and anxiety. We have to get abstinent from that, and you have to change the way you live. So, however you do that, I'm on board, and I don't mean that from a sarcasm's perspective or anything along those lines. I've seen people do it through church, do it through therapy, do it through their own personal journey, yoga, working out, eating better. The overwhelming majority of people that I've seen have success have done it through a 12-step program. But that doesn't mean we're the only way. It's the way that worked for me, but I support anyone on their journey and whatever works for them, as long as those two conditions are met: abstinence and a total change of behavior. They say, you only have to change one thing, everything.
Well, and we say that the alcohol, the addiction, whatever the focus is only a symptom of the disease. So we're talking about eliminating the thing that's blocking us from any recovery, and
Yeah.
then solving the original issue.
So, Lee, it's really interesting is that so I founded an institute this last year called the Chronic Hope Institute. And the mission of the institute is to help the public understand addiction and recovery and codependency, and to help clinicians understand addiction, codependency, and recovery. And a lot of the dilemma that I get is that people don't quite grasp and understand what it's all about and what we're doing and why. And they believe, a lot of the clinicians that I know and engage with, they'll call me and they say, I've been working with this guy, and I know he's got terrible trauma or anxiety or depression, and we're really trying to get his using in order, but but for some reason we just can't get the drinking and the drugs in order. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you're not going to be able to get to that stuff until the drugs and the alcohol are eliminated. I said, you need to understand the perspective here is that if someone's using a mind altering substance, you can't address their secondary issues. And it's the same thing in the recovery world, right? I can't get to the good stuff if I'm still using. And here's something fun. I can be in sobriety. I can be in my meetings 10, 20, 30 years sober and still using people, food, smoking, whatever, and avoiding my issues. And I think that when we get sober and stay sober and continue to dig down deep into the stuff, that's where we really need God, because God's going to help us get into that really, 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 really heavy duty stuff from our childhood and our family and the stuff that's happened to us. And that's how we're going to get better. And the beauty, watch how I wrap this all up. The beauty is when we do that, we can be of service to other people, because we're not the only one in the meeting sitting there thinking, I'm 15 years sober and I'm miserable and I hate my life and I can't stand what's going on here. This sucks. So when I raise my hand and say, hey, I'm 28, 29, 30 years sober and I struggle. I am struggling. I'm struggling with staying on focus. I'm struggling with work. I struggle with my marriage. And it doesn't mean I'm failing. It just means that's my reality. And I need God today at 29 and a half years sober more than I've ever needed God, to be there for me, to carry me, to get me to where I need to go and to be part of the gig. And so look at that.
And I mean, I guess if we're focused on a constant effort of working the 12 steps,
hmm
then as soon as we become aware of that pain, whatever's happening, stress at work, stress in the family, relationship stress, whatever, then we can always go back to the second step and say, wait a minute, I'm powerless right now over this, but God will restore me to sanity if I let him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the majority of our pain comes from resistance, internal pain, external pain definitely can be a different situation. But internally, the more I fight and the more I want to try to control and manipulate, the more pain I put myself into.
The more attached to outcomes we become.
Absolutely. And that's the dangerous part. I think that's the thing, right? Is that, this journey is just about continuing to dig deeper and get farther into it and see what's going on. And it's going to be scary and it's going to be uncomfortable. I about 3.5 years ago, I started doing adult children of alcoholics, and my mom was a prescription drug addict, and my family system is rife with drugs and alcohol and all sorts of crazy behavior. And I got to tell you, man, I mean, working those steps and digging into that stuff, oh, ouch. I mean, we're getting into the core issues. I mean, AA is great. AA got me sober and it made me behave like an adult. But when I started looking at how come I have these behavior patterns that never go away, and I started doing the ACA stuff, it's like, ooh, oh, ouch. Oh, okay. So that, and my only hope is God, you know, and the 12 steps. So,
It's interesting because my sponsor says if 6 and 7 doesn't remove the issues, you might need another program. And you just gave me an example of that.
sorry.
Cool. If you're still engaged in behavior patterns that are destructive,
Yeah.
maybe it's an ACA issue, or maybe it's a food addicts issue, or maybe it's a Gamblers Anonymous issue, right?
Yeah. I mean, who knows what? My wife says that she's going to make up T-shirts for me for my practice, and it's going to say on the front, "Of course, we're going to talk about your childhood." Because what else is there? And then on the back, it's going to say, healthy families come from healthy individuals. Healthy individuals work on their stuff. Everybody has stuff. And when we can get to an environment where we get to a place where we can actually all start talking about that, you know, and putting the cards on the table in a meeting and saying, oh my God, I'm finding out that I'm really attached to material wealth or physical wealth or spirit, I'm really struggling. And I think that's the best way to attract newer people into this program because, we all get sober, but then all of a sudden we're like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff I got to clean up and a lot of messes I've created. How do I get through that? And like you said, 6 and 7, right, is huge. I mean, the funny thing for me, right, is that I did my first big fifth step back in Los Angeles, and it was an 8-hour adventure with my sponsor. And, I called him, did 5, and then we did 6 and 7. I mean, within an hour, I'm on the phone with my girlfriend yelling at her. I mean, whew, got that stuff down. So it doesn't go away. Right off
Progress,
the
not
bat.
perfection.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this has been a great dissection of the daily reflection around the root of our troubles, and you've kind of brought us back to the beginning around step 2. Anything else to add, or anything else you want to tell the audience before we wrap up, Kevin?
Well, the reason why I picked today is it's actually my 57th birthday.
What?
And,
Happy birthday! Outstanding.
Yeah,
Happy
yeah,
birthday.
yeah. And as Lee and I were talking about, turns out we were both born in the same hospital. Yeah,
Oh,
Crazy.
yeah. But yeah, yeah. It's when we air this, it'll be my 57th birthday, and you know, I got to be honest with you. I never thought I'd get here. You know, I about a year before I got sober, I cut my finger open bartending and went to the Stanford ER, and the incredibly hot ER nurse looked at me and said, you know, how old are you? And I was like, I'm 25, 25 or 26. And she said, your blood pressure is off the charts. And she's like, do you smoke? And I'm like, cigarettes? I mean, yeah, and some other stuff too. And she's like, let me explain something to you. And she said, I'm 40. And your blood pressure, your low number is my high number. You're not going to see 30 if you keep this up. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, no big deal. And so to get to the point where I'm, you know, going to be 30 years sober and 57 years old and, you know, leading a blessed life, helping people, it's like, okay, this is crazy. This is awesome. So, anyway.
It is awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Really enjoyed the message, and it was great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, and I appreciate your guys' patience with me.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks to you for listening and for your support. If you want to join in the conversation online, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Daily Reflection Podcast. We're on Twitter at Daily Reflector. And if you want to read about recovery, we've got a blog. It's at blog.dailyreflectionpodcast.com. Always appreciate your comments, your ratings, your reviews. Subscribe. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.